The first thing I noticed was the fear in her eyes. Not the kind of fear that comes from danger, but the kind that comes from being completely alone in a crowded world. She grabbed my hand in the middle of the airport, looked straight into my eyes, and whispered, "Please, pretend you know me." I had never seen her before in my life. But the desperation in her voice made me forget that. For a few seconds, everything around me disappeared. The announcements, the rushing footsteps, the sound of luggage wheels rolling across the floor, all of it faded. There was only a stranger holding onto me like I was the last piece of hope she had left. And what happened after that moment would change both of our lives forever. Before I continue, if you believe that one small act of kindness can create a second chance, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Echoes of Hope. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life. My name is Kaelan, and before that day, I thought I understood what loneliness looked like. I thought loneliness was sitting in an empty apartment after a long day, eating dinner in silence, or watching the world move on without you. But I was wrong. I learned that true loneliness was standing in a crowded place and feeling like nobody in the entire world would notice if you disappeared. I was at the airport that afternoon because I was leaving the city where I had spent the last 10 years of my life. I had lost my job months earlier, my closest friend had moved away, and the relationship I once believed would last forever ended without warning. I felt like every door I knocked on was closing in my face. I wasn't running towards something new. I was running away from everything that reminded me of failure. I was sitting near the departure gate, staring at my phone without reading anything, when a woman suddenly appeared in front of me. She looked exhausted. Her hair was messy from what seemed like a long journey, and her hands were shaking slightly. Then she said those words. "Please, pretend you know me." I looked behind her, expecting someone to be chasing her. Maybe she was in trouble. Maybe she had mistaken me for someone else. "Do I know you?" I asked quietly. She shook her head quickly. "No. But please, just for a minute." Before I could answer, she sat beside me and held my arm like we were old friends. A few moments later, a tall man wearing a dark jacket walked past us. He looked around the terminal carefully. His eyes stopped on her. The woman squeezed my arm tighter. I didn't know who she was. But I knew she was scared. So I played along. I smiled and said, "I can't believe you finally made it. I was starting to worry you would miss the flight." Her expression changed instantly. For the first time, there was a small sign of relief in her eyes. The man looked at us for a few seconds, then walked away. Only after he disappeared did she let go of my arm. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I looked at her and asked, "Who was that?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the floor. "My name is Seraphina," she finally said. And I know this sounds crazy, but I didn't know who else to ask. There was something about the way she said it that made me believe her. She wasn't trying to create drama. She was trying to survive. Seraphina told me she had been traveling to meet her younger brother, who was recovering from an accident in another city. But during her trip, she received strange messages from someone she used to know. Someone she had spent years trying to escape. She didn't explain everything. Not at first. But I could see the pain behind her silence. I offered to call security, but she immediately shook her head. "No," she said. "If I involve them, everything becomes complicated. I just needed a few minutes where I didn't feel invisible." That sentence stayed with me. A few minutes where I didn't feel invisible. Because I understood that feeling. Maybe not her exact pain, but the emptiness behind it. I had spent months feeling like nobody cared whether I was there or not. That day, two strangers who felt forgotten somehow found each other. We sat together until my flight was called. But something inside me told me not to leave. For years, I had been waiting for someone to save me from my own sadness. Maybe that day, I had the chance to be the person I was waiting for. So I missed my flight. I stayed. Seraphina looked surprised when she realized. You didn't have to do that, she said. I know, I replied. Then why did you? I thought about it. Because someone once needed kindness from me and I ignored the chance. Because I knew what it felt like to be broken and pretend you weren't. Because sometimes a person doesn't need a perfect solution. Sometimes they just need someone to sit beside them. Over the next few hours, she slowly told me the truth. The man at the airport wasn't a stranger. He was someone from her past who had controlled her life for years. After a difficult childhood and losing her parents young, Seraphina had learned to trust very few people. She had built walls around herself so high that even she couldn't climb over them. But now she was tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of pretending she was okay. When we finally left the airport, I helped her find a safe place to stay until she could continue her journey. Before she left, she gave me a small piece of paper. Promise me you'll open this when you feel like your life is over, she said. I laughed softly. That's a strange promise. She smiled. So was asking a stranger to pretend he knew me. Then she walked away. For weeks after that, I thought about her. I returned to my apartment, but something had changed. My problems were still there. My empty room was still empty. My job situation was still uncertain. But I no longer felt completely useless. Because I realized something important. Maybe we don't always need someone to fix our entire life. Sometimes we just need one moment that reminds us we matter. Months passed. I started rebuilding my life slowly. I found a smaller job. I began meeting people again. I stopped seeing my past as proof that I had failed. I saw it as a chapter that ended. Then one evening, while cleaning my desk, I found the piece of paper Seraphina gave me. I almost threw it away. But I opened it. Inside were only 5 words. Thank you for seeing me. Those words hit harder than I expected. Because I knew exactly what she meant. She wasn't thanking me for pretending to know her. She was thanking me because for a few minutes, she didn't feel invisible. A year later, I received a letter. It was from Seraphina. She had found my address through the information I gave her that day. She wrote that she was doing better. She had reunited with her brother, started a new career, and finally learned that her past didn't control her future. But the last part of the letter was what broke me. She wrote, "You saved me on a day when you didn't even realize you were saving yourself." I read that sentence again and again. Because she was right. That random afternoon in an airport didn't just change her life. It changed mine. It taught me that kindness is never wasted. A simple smile. A few minutes of your time. A decision to listen instead of walk away. These things may seem small to us, but to someone else, they can become the reason they keep going. Years later, I still think about that moment. The stranger who asked me to pretend I knew her became the person who reminded me who I really was. And maybe that's how life works. Sometimes the people we help are the ones who help us heal. If this story touched your heart, please support this video by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing to Echoes of Hope. Your engagement helps these emotional stories reach more people who may need a reminder that kindness still exists. Before the ending, I want to ask you something special. Comment the word kindness below if you believe one small good action can change someone's entire life. Because somewhere out there, someone may be waiting for a reason to believe in humanity again. And maybe, just maybe, you could be that reason. The next time you see someone struggling, remember Seraphina's words. I just needed a few minutes where I didn't feel invisible. Sometimes, being there for someone is the greatest gift you can give. And sometimes, the stranger who asks you to pretend you know them is the person who helps you finally understand yourself.